Morning, everybody. It's good and loud this morning. We'll have to get real close to that mic. Great to see you all here this morning. Uh, we have the title today really isn't quite accurate. Advocate for Justice in Palestine. We actually have advocates. We have two advocates here. And I think a lot of you in the audience are probably advocates for justice in Palestine too. So I think we have lots of advocates here today. Our speaker, one of our speakers here is Farouq Abukhamireh. How'd I do on that?
You're doing good.
No, if I said it wrong, because I don't even have the center of the Milwaukee Bucks name number. So. And Waleed Nassar. And they are speakers from the U.S. Palestinian Community Network, which is a nationwide network, and they're from the local chapter of that network. I'll also add that maybe some of you participated know about that we have an organization too, you Youth for Justice in the Middle East. So some of you probably have heard of it and maybe are participating in it. So with that, I'll have our speakers start off. Farouq just told me this morning he's just back from Palestine. That he's suffering from jet lag.
That's true.
And so I think we'll hear a very interesting presentation this morning about their take on what would be a Palestinian state and how to get there. So.
Thank you.
All right, I'll get us started. Well, first, just to introduce myself and of course, my name is Waleed. I'm a Palestinian American. I live in the Milwaukee area. Recently graduated from UW Milwaukee. There I was the student leader at the Students for Justice in Palestine organization during the 2024 Palestine encampments. And today, really, we're going to talk about just an overview of Palestinian history. We're going to get into some of the more recent occupation facts and figures, and then we're going to talk about Gaza, and then, of course, what we see as a future for Palestine.
Just a quick introduction. My name is Farouq. Abukhamireh. Did very well. And yeah, I was born in Palestine, but well, close to most to half my life in Palestine, and came to the United States, went to Marquette University, did my master's in engineering, worked as an information technology professional, if you will. I had hobbies in art and calligraphy, not as much as I don't, but trying. And very excited to be here and talk to you about Palestine. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and just to get it started, okay, we're gonna go very basic. I'm sure many of you know about where Palestine is, who Palestinians are, and what Zionism is, but just to define everything right from the get-go. Where is Palestine? So Palestine is located in the Middle East, or maybe a more accurate term is West Asia. It's right in the middle of everything. It's in what is called the Fertile Crescent, the cradle of civilizations. The Sumerians were here, Mesopotamians, the ancient Egyptians, everybody was there. You can see it's to the east of Egypt, south of Lebanon, and it's on the Mediterranean. Okay, so who are the Palestinians? Palestinians are an Arab-speaking people. Arabic is a Semitic language that makes us Semitic-speaking people. Most of us are Muslim, about 93%, and about 6% are Christian. Actually, that's the lower end estimate. Some people estimate it to be 12% or higher. We don't really have the most accurate figures there, but most Christians are either Catholic or Orthodox, and there are some Anglicans and some Unitarians as well. And this is a good figure to see where Palestinians live throughout the world. About half of Palestinians live in historic Palestine, so that includes the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel. And then about 44% live in other Arab countries, and most of that 44% are actually refugees. So in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, most of them are refugees. And the 6%, that's me and Farouq, actually the highest population of Palestinians outside of the Arab world is in Chile. There are about 500,000 Palestinians in Chile. Actually, most of them are Catholic, even, in case you guys didn't know. And of course, we can't talk about Palestinians without talking about Zionism. Just from the top, I want to say, Zionism is not Judaism. You can be a Jewish anti-Zionist, you can be a non-Jewish Zionist. In fact, most Zionists in America and around the world are Christians or non-Jews. The base of Zionism is in America is Christian evangelists, like Ted Cruz. And just to give you guys an actual definition, I wrote it down here. Zionism in its political manifestation is committed to the belief that it is a good idea to establish in the country of Palestine a sovereign Jewish state that attempts to guarantee, both in law and practice, a demographic majority of ethnic Jews in the territories under its control. That's a mouthful, but what that means is Zionism is the belief in a Jewish majority country. That has to be enforceable. If, let's say, Israel was now 49% Jewish, that defeats the entire purpose of Zionism. So, actually, Palestinians living in Israel, just existing in Israel, is a threat to the Israeli state. It's a threat to the Zionist ideology, because they need to enforce that majority. And also, we have more babies than them. So, we're outbreeding Jews in Israel. So that's what Zionism is. Actually, let me tell you something the founder himself said. Zionism is a settler colonial ideology. So what that means is people from outside a certain region or country want to come into a certain region or country and displace the local indigenous population there and settle their land. Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, the godfather of Zionism, as regarded by most academics, wrote in his diary, I'm going to read the quote for you guys here, "We must expropriate gently the private property on the state assigned to us," that's Palestine. "We shall try to spirit the penniless population across the border by procuring employment for it in the transit countries while denying employment in our country. The process of expropriation and the removal of the poor must be carried out discreetly and circumspectly." So what he's saying here is they want rich Jewish foundations in Europe to go into Palestine, buy up the land, kick out the tenants, and slowly settle the land. And that's exactly what they did. There were these, and I can show you a map here, there were these rich European Jewish people who would set up these foundations in Europe, and there were some in America at the time. They would collect donations, collect funds. They'd go and start buying up swaths of land, large amounts of land. And these pieces of land would typically be owned by absentee landlords, guys living in Cairo, Beirut, Damascus. And once they would get their hands on the deed to that land, they would start evicting the tenants. Usually they would be Palestinian farmers. That's why we refer to them here as the penniless population. These guys really had nothing. They were the lowest class in Palestinian society economically. So once they would get their hands on the land, they would evict the tenants, and they would start settling the land with European Jews. That initially was the case. And over time, you can see, from 1882, first Zionist colony was established under Ottoman rule. So this was when the Turks were in control. And then at 1947, you can see how much land they had acquired. They acquired about 6 to 7% of historic Palestine. And you can see the progression as we go along. Some history for you guys. In 1917, there was this thing called the Balfour Declaration. Essentially what this was is after the British took control of historic Palestine from the Ottomans in World War I, Balfour, who was a British official at the time, essentially was lobbied by the Zionist elite in Britain to essentially promise Palestine to the Jewish population. So, just in case you guys are still not on board with the idea that this is a colonialist ideology, here you have Britain promising Palestine to another population, a European population. So Palestinians weren't playing thugs in this. They were pretty aware of the fact that their country was being stolen from them. And there were many revolts even in Palestine. There's a lot of tension. There were different political parties that rose up, and eventually that led to the 1947 UN resolution, which was a partition plan. What this partition plan was basically the United Nations, the international community, I say that in scare quotes, decided to come up with an idea. Let's split Palestine down the middle, half of it for Jews, half of it for the Arabs, for the Palestinians. And this is the map they came up with. As you can see, it's less than ideal, just the shape of the map itself, but this was inherently an unfair partition plan. Not just based on the borders, but also based on who could vote for it. Look at the names of the countries that were actually member states of the United Nations. Most of them were either European client states or European colonial states themselves. Obviously, this plan was never implemented, and this actually led to the Nakba. So, Nakba it's an Arabic word, which means a catastrophe. Israelis call this the Day of Independence. We call it a Nakba. This happened around May 15th, which is when they established independence in Israel. This was essentially an offensive military campaign by numerous Zionist militias, which ended up in the displacement of about 800,000 Palestinians, and I can show you here. You can see the green areas were where Palestinians were allowed to settle in historic Palestine, and then the blue areas were forbidden for Palestinians to settle in. The West Bank, right there, that big landmass on the east of historic Palestine, that was under Jordanian control. So Arab armies came in to defend the land, and eventually, it came under Jordanian administration, and the rest of them came under Egyptian administration. I want to say also, one thing you hear in mainstream American media in particular about the establishment of the State of Israel, you hear this kind of mythological story. This tiny Jewish state, they went to establish a state, and then all of a sudden, numerous Arab armies came to attack it. I want you guys to look at that previous partition map. This is what the Israelis, the predecessors, the Israelis agreed on, and this is what they ended up with. Can anyone tell me of a defensive war where the country that was on the defense grew? And this actually comes up later on, I'll show you here. So after 1948, Palestinians living under Jordanian control and under Egyptian control, a lot of them were refugees in Syria and Lebanon. Eventually this led to something called a Nassar, which means a catastrophe in Arabic. This is also referred to as the Six-Day War. This happened in 1967. This was also another offensive war by Israel, where they attacked, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they attacked Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and they had some skirmishes with Lebanon on the border. I'm not sure if they were officially at war with them, but this led to the displacement of 300,000 Palestinians, led to the displacement of my family, actually. And in fact, many of the people that were displaced in 1948 were displaced again in 1967. And this is the map. This is even more drastic. This is by Israeli scholarship, this was a defensive war. Israel doubled in size in 1967. They attacked 3 countries and they struck Egypt first. I don't know of any wars, any defensive wars, where the country that was on the defense doubled in size and also struck first. I could be wrong, maybe someone could give me an example in the audience, but and to this day, they actually no longer occupy the Sinai Peninsula. They gave it back to Egypt, again in scare quotes, in the 70s under a peace deal, which was essentially a normalization deal with Israel. And then the Golan Heights, or the Golan Heights, are still occupied by the Israelis. And I'll hand it off to Farouq for this section.
Thank you, that was good. Yeah, so just a quick note about Zionism. So Zionism started, I think, in 1890, and it was a reaction, or it was answer to what the Jewish people were enduring in Europe. Jewish people were abused, let's admit that before the Holocaust and around World War II. So there was a lot of abuse. They couldn't, they said like, this cannot happen. We can't continue to live like that. We have to establish some sort of state for only Jewish people only. And there was a lot of options that were thrown around the countries. I think one of them in Africa, I heard a lot of countries that they were proposing. They ended up settling on Palestine, thinking, oh, we have some history in Palestine. So the issue with Zionism is actually the fact that they're calling for a Jewish democratic state, and that's a problem in Palestine because so in Palestine and the history, there's the Jewish people who lived in Palestine. So some thousands of years ago, then Christianity came about, right? A lot of Jewish people, a lot of other religious people from other religions converted to Christianity, and then Islam came about. So some Christians converted to Islam, Jewish converted to Islam, and so on and so forth. So the same people, three different religions. And it's like, if you look at me and you look at the next Jewish guy, we pretty much look the same. So this is a situation where you're saying, oh, we're gonna kick you out because we didn't convert to Christianity, Islam, but you did. And we're gonna kick you out. This is gonna be a state for Jewish people only. So think about Palestine. Today, there's 50% of population in Palestine, historic Palestine, is Palestinians, the other 50 is Jewish. Despite the genocide after genocide, the apartheid after apartheid, and the ethnic cleansing after another, and all these wars, there's still 50% of population Palestinian. And Israel, of course, tried so many ways. The last attempt is the Gaza genocide, and also the genocide in the West Bank, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. To essentially, basically, to push the Palestinian population out to accomplish their dream of a Jewish democratic state, which is impossible. And then, this will actually lead us to our proposal of a solution. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the West Bank, which, just like Jerry mentioned, I just came back from Palestine, and I flew into Amman, which is the Jordanian capital. Why? Because Palestinians are not allowed to fly into any airport in Palestine. There's more than one. The major airport is the Ben Gurion airport, and Palestinians are not allowed to use it. Fly out or fly in, you can. So you have to fly to Amman, and the only entry or the point of movement between the West Bank and the outside world is this crossing point on the Jordanian River. And so this is, right now, Israel is doing something where they're not allowing enough people to come back in. You are allowed to leave as many people as possible. You can leave the West Bank, but coming back in, they're limiting that to 2,500 people every day. Friday, 1,500, and Saturday is closed. That is causing a major problem. People are leaving but not allowed to come back. And so I was trying to get in, back in to the West Bank, and it was almost impossible. I heard stories of people going and waiting in line, starting like at midnight, waiting to cross and not being able to, coming back the next day and so on and so forth. I heard about all people fainting. I heard about people not drinking water because they don't want to have to use the bathroom because there is no bathroom. So that is the first obstacle as you cross and go back to Palestine. So I did. I'm in the Palestinian, the West Bank, and just going to where my mother is. So I'm going to visit my mother who's not feeling well. So there's checkpoints, one after another. Some checkpoints, they have a schedule where they open, let's say, at 1, and they close, let's say, at 6. So there's this one checkpoint supposed to be open at 1, and it's not opening. I think I spent 45 minutes waiting to clear that checkpoint. And there's a lot of them. I think there's 520 checkpoints in the West Bank, just like this one. And it's not like you're waiting because there's some security threat or looking for a terrorist. No. They actually don't examine your vehicle. They don't do anything. They look at your passport or your ID. I'll let you through slowly and painfully. So that's one of the things. They're installing gates on small Palestinian communities, villages, and cities. Jericho is a big city in the West Bank, and they have gates around the city. They open on a schedule. They open at 6 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. And if you are somewhere, let's say, going for a doctor's appointment, you're going to the hospital, visiting a friend, whatever you're doing, you come back a little late, you have to find a place to sleep. Maybe some people under an olive tree, or maybe, somewhere, just because you cannot get in and go to your house. There is another issue of the settlers. There's settler violence, and that is actually real. You can see it. I remember as I was waiting to clear that checkpoint, there was like commotion and noise, and I asked the driver, I said, like, "What's going on here?" He said, "Oh, there's this settler on this hill. They let him loose." And he actually managed to harass all the Palestinian people who lived in that neighborhood out of it. And he's protected, of course, the settlers are protected by the Israeli army. So basically, you as a Palestinian, the settler can harass you, they can do whatever, they can come into your house, they can beat you up, but you cannot defend yourself. The minute you do that, you will be shot, and a lot of people have been killed, have been shot by the Israeli army who are protecting the settlers. Remember, there's two sets of laws here that apply. The military law that applies to Palestinians and the civil Israeli law that applies to the settlers. So the army cannot touch the settlers, but can kill the Palestinians. So there is this widespread settler violence, and the goal is to evacuate, is to harass the Palestinians out of their land. There's a lot of other things. Let's see. Economy-wise, so most of the Palestinians made their living by working in Israel, and right now Israel just wouldn't let people go to work and make their living. They wouldn't let money in. For example, I want to transfer money to my family. They wouldn't let me do that. So they're choking the population every way possible. The goal is to essentially cleanse the area from Palestine. The goal is this one Jewish democratic state, which is impossible to happen without a genocide after a genocide. Now, here's what happened in Gaza. Let's take a look at that. Of course, we're going to talk about that. Right? Essentially, a full-blown genocide. They erased Gaza. They killed 75,000 people.
And
83.
that's a low estimate too, because if you look at the Lancet, which is a well-respected medical journal, they apply a 4x multiple for indirect deaths because they destroyed hospitals. Suppose you have cancer, you need to go get chemo. The hospital doesn't exist, the chemo doesn't exist. There are 2 million people in Gaza, there are 2,000 beds in hospitals. That's less than 1% to serve the entire population of Gaza. So 75,000 times 4, I don't know how many of you here are good at arithmetic, but do the math. It comes out to a lot larger than what we hear in Western media.
Yeah. So I think what happened, like the outcome of the Gaza genocide is one thing, that no matter what Israel tries, no matter how many people they kill, it's just the Jewish democratic state is not going to happen. It's just impossible. Plus, imagine the investment of the Israeli state and Israeli community and Israeli society in essentially maintaining the status quo. This is a lot of intelligence, this is a lot of army, this is a lot of killing, this is a lot of bombing, this is a society on edge, and I've seen that. I mean, you walk down the streets in Tel Aviv and Haifa, and you see armed people, soldiers walking around with machine guns. That's the norm. This is the society we're talking about. And is this sustainable? For how long? You know what I'm saying? And why are we doing this? You know what I'm saying? Is it compatible with the modern day values, with the American values? Aren't we democratic, secular, right? Equal? Are we, is it compatible with the European values? So all these questions, how would Israel accomplish that without, I don't know, outright killing or bombing or nuking the Palestinians? But there is a good solution. So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I wanna also just to give some facts and figures to Farouq. You probably know this better than me, or not probably. You do know this better than me. This is a map of the road system in historic Palestine. You can see here in the orange are roads that are not accessible to Palestinians. So if you have a yellow license plate, you can't drive on those roads. The white, or no, the red roads right there, the West Bank, are only accessible to Israeli settlers in the West Bank. So now we're talking about the West Bank, where this is meant to be the future Palestinian state where it's supposed to be established. There are roads where Palestinians can't drive on. And then the white roads are the roads that Palestinians are able to drive on. And it's based on the color of your license plate. If you have a yellow license plate, you can go wherever the hell you want. If you have a white one, you're Palestinian, you're tough luck, pretty much. Um, and it's split up into, it's tiered. Farouk was talking about the two systems, it's apartheid. It's tiered. If you're a Jewish citizen of Israel, you can look at this map here. This is where you're allowed to go and live and have fun. And the rest of the Palestinians, even Palestinian citizens of Israel, weren't allowed to live wherever they please. And there's also another class, East Jerusalem Palestinians. Now these guys, I don't even know how these guys are able to live their life day to day. They have these residency permits, Israeli residency permits, in East Jerusalem. If they leave East Jerusalem to go live somewhere else, they will lose that residency permit. If they don't come back regularly to Jerusalem, they will lose that residency permit, if I'm not mistaken. So they are pretty much trapped in East Jerusalem. They're not allowed to live wherever they want, if they want to stay in East Jerusalem. To Farouq's point, as many Palestinians can leave, as Israel, this is what Israel wants, as many Palestinians to leave, but they make it very difficult for Palestinians to come back. And in the West Bank, Palestinians, of course, just pure apartheid here. I don't think there's any nuance there. If you're a Palestinian and you live in the West Bank, right here, and the Israeli military catches you, you face a trial under a military court. Military court has a 99% conviction rate. 99, it's 99.8, 99.6 something, or 99.8, one of those figures. The sources they differ on the figures, but it's about 99%. If you're an Israeli settler, if they even decide to try you, you go under a civil court. And this is the peace plan that Bill Clinton brokered. God bless him. And as you can see, they split the West Bank into several areas, 3 areas: areas A, B, and C. Areas A being full Palestinian civil and security control, and Area B being Palestinian civil control, but Israeli security control, and Area C being full Israeli control. And as you can see, 60% is Area C. And just so you know, guys, I wasted your time talking about this because this doesn't even apply anymore. They don't care. They'll go into Ramallah, they'll go into Nablus, they'll go into these big Palestinian cities, and they'll do whatever they want. They don't consult the Palestinian security forces, or if they do, it's more like, if you don't get out of our way, we're gonna blow you guys up. This is the reality. And these are the settlers that Farouq was talking about. They're pretty much, they live in the most unpleasant places for Palestinians. What that means is, you have a community here and a community here. The settler community will come and live right between you to cause a rift. They'll establish a military base somewhere near your communities, and they'll establish a settler outpost in between the communities as well, which makes it even more difficult for Palestinians to travel.
Wait, can I mention something? So the inside, this yellow area is where what's called Israel right now, and in it, 2.1 million Palestinians live there. They have Israeli citizenship. Now those people, so I collected some statistics about, for example, crime rate. Last year, 254 people were killed as a result of homicide crimes. This is a rate of, I think it's 11 point some per 100,000 per year. The same rate for the Jewish population is 0.67 per 100,000 person per year. The amount is 17.5 times more in the Palestinian communities than Israeli communities. And you can't tell why this is happening. Israel doesn't really care about enforcing the law, catching the criminals, prosecuting them. They even, I mean, there's stories about them supporting the criminals and giving them guns and giving them, immunity and not going after them. So that's one thing. Health. So I looked at the average age of people living. I think there is 4 years difference between the Jewish is higher and the Palestinian living inside Israel. Those are Israeli citizens and Palestinians who stayed there. Less 5 years, 4 years less in average. That's their living, how long they live. Economy. The average Jewish person family makes 1.6 times more than the average Palestinian family inside Israel. So apartheid and ethnic cleansing does not really apply only to Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, but also to Palestinians who live within Israel, who have Israeli citizens supposed to have equal rights, but they don't.
And since we're on the note of strangulation, really, but we're here, let's talk about Gaza. So another just basic fact, this is Gaza. It's on the coast of it has a Mediterranean coast. I overlaid Milwaukee County to show you guys how Gaza compares to Milwaukee in terms of size. It's about 58% of the size of Milwaukee County, but it has 2 times the population. Right? So imagine that, 2 times the population, but 58% the size of Milwaukee. So it's about 4 times as dense. And it's been under complete blockade since 2007. And I think this is a great visual here. This is by Visualizing Palestine. It's a great project. You can see that if we looked at the life of a child from age 0 to age 16, the life of a child in Gaza, you can see that they would have experienced 6 wars through 16 years of living. Initially, there was a blockade in 2005 when the Israelis withdrew, again, scare quotes, from Gaza. What that means when they withdrew is they removed the settlers in Gaza. Settlers, imagine settlers living in this tiny space right there. So it was congested as is. Jewish settlers said, we're going to go and we're going to live in here, in the Gaza Strip as well. So the goal is to kind of get Palestinians to get fed up with it and leave, as Farouq mentioned previously. So when they pulled out of Gaza, they blockaded its maritime, its sea access. They have control over their airspace. They have control over their water. They have control of electricity, imports, exports. Complete blockade. It's still an occupation, except they don't have boots on the ground at the time. Now, what happened since then? Since the blockade started, there were several assaults on Gaza by the Israeli government. They call this policy mowing the lawn. Quite a crude way to put it, but what they do is every once in a while, they see the lawn getting longer, it's growing, and they say, okay, we're going to go mow the lawn. What that means is they're going to go and do do a bombing campaign, or maybe they'll send in some soldiers to kill a few people just to keep the fear alive and just to keep the Palestinians in check. So the first assault, second assault, third assault, these are mowing the lawn campaigns. They differ in the reasons they say they entered or how they entered and all of that, but in reality, they're all mowing the lawn campaigns. In 2018, there was something called the Great Return March, which was it was a peaceful demonstration where a large amount of Palestinians in Gaza said, we're going to march towards the Israeli-built fence that keeps them in Gaza like a prison, okay, because there's no access to leave or come in as freely as you think. And they gathered up, they marched peacefully. Eventually, what happened was the Israelis started shooting at them. They started with snipers. They started arresting people, abducting them, and this was an entirely peaceful demonstration, an entirely peaceful march. This was in 2018. And then in 2021, there was another assault, another bombing campaign, because the Israelis are too, at the time, they were too scared to go into Gaza. So what they would do is they'd send their planes and they'd just bomb. And this is what they do today. And then the fifth assault was a similar case, just another bombing campaign. And at that point, imagine this: from 2005 onwards, blockade, don't have food, you don't have water. They control your diet. The Israelis control the Gazans' diet down to the calorie. They count the calories just to make sure they're not starving, just right above starvation, just so that they don't starve to death, right? All of this, it's like you're putting, you're leaving the pressure cooker on until it explodes. And that's what happened in 2023. And that led to the genocide in Gaza, which, as we mentioned earlier, the figure is about 73,600, and those are names to bodies. We have 73,600 plus names. There are about 10,000 people missing. People we know are missing, just don't know where they are. Under the rubble, we presume they're dead. About 170,000 injured, and I'm talking people missing limbs, uh, these types of life-altering injuries. So if we apply that multiplier I was talking about earlier, that 73,000 multiplied by 4, which is the conservative indirect death rate, it comes out to about 300,000 deaths. Like I said, most hospitals are destroyed. There are 2,000 beds for 2 million people in Gaza. What if you need insulin even? Imagine insulin, something so basic here. Or if you have asthma, you can't breathe. But that leads us to what we think of the future, solutions. Again, it's solutions in scare quotes, but more like the inevitable only path forward. I'll hand this off.
Okay. I have a thought here. So, in Palestine, Jordan, and Syria, all that, and in the Muslim world, Arab world, every time there was an issue, there was the Jewish people were abused, genocided in Europe. Where did they go? They go to Morocco, they went to Yemen, Iraq, they went to Palestine. They lived a very dignified life. They were respected. They're prosperous, and they were happy. They're part of the community. Not only Jewish people, the Armenians, for example. The Armenian genocide happened in Turkey. Where did the Armenians go to? Palestine. There is a thriving Armenian community in Palestine and Jordan. Actually, there is an Armenian quarter in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the most sacred city for all religions. Palestinians decided to give the Armenians a quarter of their most sacred city. There's the Circassians, also a genocide in southern Europe. Where do they go? To Jordan, they go to Palestine, and they're a thriving community. They're happy. They're peaceful. They're part of the fabric of community. They have like higher up positions in governments and everywhere. Jewish people too. And when the Jewish Holocaust happened in Europe, where did the Jewish people go? They came to Palestine. What did the Palestinians do? They were welcomed. They came to their homes. And of course, Zionism had to get in the way and had to decide, okay, listen, this has to be Jewish only. You guys have to go out. And there's a story of Muhammad Hadid, who's like Bella Hadid's father, and you can look it up. It's a story of his family, how they welcomed this Jewish family, gave them their house, and then the Jewish family, after I think some event that happened, that the division of Palestine, they said, okay, that's our house, you can't come back in. So that is, what's happening now. Palestine is an area where a lot of people came in and left. A lot of civilizations started with the Canaanites. You think about the Romans, the Persians, the Egyptians. You think about the Ottoman Empire. You think about the British. You think about A lot of other civilizations, people come and go. Religions, people started, Jewish and then Christianity and then Islam. All three religions were in this area, and you cannot really just say, okay, this land is only for Jewish people. I think the solution for this is to have a basically one secular, not Jewish, but secular democratic state where everyone is treated equally. And what's wrong with that? I mean, if you're looking for prosperity, if you're looking to live in peace with your neighborhood, and that is the solution. If you're looking for anything else, is really not sustainable. I mean, how long would Israel maintain its superiority in the Middle East? I mean, how long? You think of a society on edge. Society has invested most of its resources in defense. Essentially, is what they say. And basically, it's offense, you know. And how long can you maintain that? Like, how about a state like every other state in this universe? Like America, like France, like any other state. Why don't we be a one democratic secular state where everyone is treated equally? What's wrong with that? And I think, us here in America, instead of dedicated resources, giving money to Israel to essentially implement their genocide and kill people and occupy land, maybe we can support democracy. Maybe we can support, more of a state that's safe. Maybe we can stop actually supporting companies and policies that allow this ethno state to continue applying pressure, just in a model similar to South Africa, and that's what we did in South Africa. All those crimes against humanity, all those apartheid system habits, we stopped supporting them. I think we should do the same here in America, which is the biggest sponsor of the Zionist ethno state. So that's what we think is the solution. It's really simple, but beautiful.
Okay, I think probably time to take some questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
Here's a question.
I'll find the microphone.
You have to?
First of all, I apologize for my country. I was actually conceived in Palestine, so I've always been very interested in
That's
all of the events that have happened since I was born in 1948. But my mechanic for my car is in St. Francis, and they're from Ramallah. And so he showed me on his phone film footage taken by a phone camera of the Israeli Defense Forces beating up their own Jewish priests, their Orthodox priests, for holding up peace signs after October 7th. I just wanted to know that this stuff is getting around. If people are interested enough to ask Arabs what's going on and how are they doing, then you can open up a conversation with people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. Basically, the Christian population in Palestine actually went down from around 15% to the 6%, even lower. And that's a direct result to the Israeli policies in Palestine. In Gaza, they bombed a Christian hospital and a church. So it's to them, if you're not Jewish, which is sad, really. I mean, then you're a target. So
Yeah, that goes back to the idea that in order to, just to get one more, the idea that in order to maintain their state, their ideology, they need to um, essentially combat the existence of anyone who's a Palestinian, who's a permanent resident of the land, who's not Jewish. That's the idea of Zionism, like you said. So it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, if you're, look at the way they even treat the IDF soldiers that aren't Jewish, that's the Israeli military, these guys, they sacrifice themselves for an ethno-state, for an ethnicity that's not even theirs. And they're being treated horribly. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest with you, I know about myself, but about a lot of other people, it's really sad to see the Christian population dwindling in Palestine. I grew up in this little town, and the neighboring town is half Christian, half Muslim. I went to school with students, which I didn't honestly know if they're Christian or not, and I didn't care. I loved them as much. I remember up the street from where I lived as a child, there was this shop. It's on the main road leading to that town. And I remember the owner is Hajj Omar. Hajj is like, like a Muslim title for an older person. And Hajj Omar would actually around Christmas time, he put up a Christmas tree. That was beautiful. So listen, and that is how we should live. I should be able to love not only my Christian brothers and sisters, but also my Jewish brothers and sisters. We should be able to live together in peace. Not like that.
Good question right here.
Hi, thank you. I learned a lot listening to you. This is a fabulous presentation, which I will share quietly. But I serve as the vice chair of the Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee. And so it's always sticky about how we're going to negotiate or be respectful. We have things we call the third rail, which we just can't unite around. But I love the term pro-citizen. What do you think of that term?
I'm sorry, what is it? Pro?
I love the term. I am pro-citizen.
Pro-citizen. Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the term. What does it mean?
Well,
What's the
in my
context?
heart, I'm pro-Palestine, right?
Oh,
But I cannot say that. I have great compassion for Jews who also hate what's going on, but they are torn up about how to speak out against it.
okay.
And so some of them have said to me, just say you're pro-citizen. I just wonder what you think of that.
Yeah. So listen, I am pro-justice. Honestly, I am. I mean, if you want to use Palestine, Palestine is a metaphoric, whatever name used for justice, essentially. You know, and to be honest with you, we're talking about one secular democratic state where everyone's treated equally. If you want to call it Palestine, if you want to call it Israel, if you want to call it the Holy Land, I honestly don't care. You know what I'm saying? The problem is apartheid. The problem is ethnic cleansing. The problem is genocide. It's not the name. You know what I'm saying? The essence of the thing. Actually, we can do this. I have a proposal. We can call it in Hebrew Israel, in Arabic Palestine, in English we can call it the Holy Land. How about that? It's the context.
What do you agree?
Actually, just to add on to the pro-citizen point, I just want to say before this gentleman asks this question, a lot of times on campus, at our university, we encounter a lot of Jewish people who are there for faith reasons. So it's like a Chabad or a synagogue, they have a table, we go and we speak with them, they don't want to talk about politics. A lot of times what they will say is they're pro-peace. What does that mean, pro-peace? You look into it further, you start talking about the details. Well, what do you think about the settlers? No, those guys are there. We just mean we don't want guns and fighting. Okay, what about the blockade? Well, they deserve it. What about so-and-so? Well, no. So a lot of times people use catch-all terms to kind of get themselves out of the mud, let's say, instead of something. Yeah, it's out of the mud. So for me personally, I can't help but be explicit and blunt with my stance.
From my understanding, when you said the Christian population has declined from 15% to 6-something%, is that for all of Palestine or for the West Bank and Gaza? And the other question I have is how widespread among Palestinians is the one democratic state solution compared to the two-state solution?
Yeah. So the one-state solution, this idea has been around for a long time. I think the most Palestinian intellectuals, I think of Edward Said, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name, and Mahmoud Darwish, who are like one of the most prominent, most intellects in Palestinian history, community, modern, and they all are for that, for the one Palestinian. There's a lot of, I think this idea came back again now, and it's getting more and more popular as honestly the only solution. You're thinking about a small area, you're thinking a lot of common areas. You're thinking about, if you think about two states, it's number one, I think it's apartheid in one way or another, and also none of those two states will be sustainable. And the third question is why? You know what I'm saying? Can we live just together and, synergize and prosper together, respect each other, instead of, Jewish only. So, yes.
Yeah, when you say the solution is one secular state, that's what you believe. You think that, I think the UN seems to be in the Palestinians' court, what I read. Do you think that the UN would be a reasonable solution, or is Zionism so entrenched over there that really they don't pay any attention to what the UN says? I'm just trying to think how this would be implemented practically.
Yeah. You said the UN is on our side of the court. I mean, so is Mel Gibson and Sean Penn. I mean, they're about as influential as the United Nations is these days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not more. For me, it's not about whether or not it can be or how it would be implemented. It's more about what the just solution is, and on top of that, what the trajectory seems to look like. This is the West Bank. Look at the map of the West Bank. The last map they drew, that Trump proposal in 2021, looked like Swiss cheese for the Palestinians. We didn't even have a border with Egypt. The border that we had with Egypt and Elizabeth in the proposal was Israeli controlled. So, like what I was saying, it's an apartheid idea, the two-state solution. So it wouldn't make sense to implement that. So, kind of leaning towards the one state. For me, I don't really think about how they implement it. It's more so when will the Israelis cave and say we can't live like this?
Yeah. One other thing, actually, Israel would not accept a two-state solution either. I mean, Israel is after, let's face it. I mean, Israel wants this whole land, all of Palestine as their, the state of Israel. And that's why they're choking the population in the West Bank. And they're proposing those Bantustans, like small cities controlled by something called the Palestinian National Authority, which is essentially, in effect, is a part of the Israeli security apparatus. Just collecting garbage and issuing citations. They're not doing anything because Israel doesn't want this population. They don't want the Palestinians as part of their system. And they're just like, what do we do with those people? We choking them, they're not leaving. We kill them in Gaza, they're not leaving. What are we going to do with them? Let's do a Pakistan kind of. And this is what you're going to see next. Now they're essentially annexing most of the West Bank, 62% of the West Bank. Essentially, this is where the center of violence. This is where they evicted, like harassing Palestinians out of their homes. And Palestinians are going to live in those small Pakistan cities, the Ramallah, the Nablus cities, and controlled by some Palestinian authority. They don't vote in the Israeli system. They're not part of the Israeli society. It's just like we don't want you. Just get out of here. They don't know what to do with us though. They try everything. It's just not working. So.
Do you have any thoughts on how Gaza will ever be rebuilt? How that will come about?
It's really sad what's happening in Gaza. Israel doesn't want it to be rebuilt. I think they wanted to keep it uninhabitable. They want people to leave slowly, and they want to empty the land. It's part of the whole thing, They don't want Palestinians there. They want to leave maybe up to 20% of Palestinians in the land. Okay, at that point they will stop because then they're a minority and they're not affecting the Jewishness of the state of Israel. So that's the goal. But obviously things are not working for them. Up until now, it's 50-50. And I don't know how many other genocides they're going to have to do before they accomplish their goal. So.
Thank you. I have two questions, one of which is for something to go forward. If Netanyahu would work on, would that make a difference, or do you think he has the support of the majority of the people? And my other question then is, I think I got in here a couple minutes late, but I think the first slide said from the river to the sea. And I'm wondering what that means to you too, because I gather that has a lot of different meanings to different people, and that's been one of those flashpoints on the campuses, making some of the Jewish students feel uncomfortable because of the way some people interpret it.
Right. From the river to the sea is this one secular democratic state where the Jewish brothers and sisters and the Christians and the Muslims and people with no belief are allowed to live equally in peace without being harassed, without being, with no apartheid. And that it is. And like I said, I mean, the name of this entity, we can do Palestine for the Palestine in Arabic and in Hebrew we can call it Israel, and in English we can call it the Homeland. The name doesn't really matter. It's the essence of the state to be democratic, to be secular, to be equal. So that's what the residency means to me, and I think for everyone else.
Yeah, and actually to address your other point, Netanyahu is Israel. Okay. Israel is, 78 years old. He's been either the prime minister or the leader of the opposition for between 20 and 30 years. So I don't know whether first of all, I don't know what is left of the opposition, but they pretty much agree on one point, which is screw the Palestinians.
Right.
They all agree on that one point. It's heartwarming to see the unity there, but it's not nice, when you're a Palestinian. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's more like they'll be forced, like their hand will be forced. They'll have to play their hand because people can't live like this. It's not sustainable. There's not an infinite amount of money in Israel's court to deploy their security strategies. I mean, how many countries have they bombed in the past 2 years? They've bombed Qatar, which is, I mean, like, who the hell would bomb Qatar? Like, what did you got there? They're rabid, and eventually this is not something that they're gonna be able to sustain. So I don't know if they would like it. I'm sure Israelis wouldn't like to live with Palestinians because their entire state is built on that racial supremacy idea.
Yeah.
Just a thought. This really reminds me of what the Europeans did to the Native Americans. Go and destroy where they're living and kick them out. The Native Americans certainly fought back, but it seems like Palestinians are maybe being a little bit more successful in staying put. That's one thing. I forgot the second thing, but that was kind of my point that I was thinking of.
Yeah. True.
What way would there be, Andy, to secure a secular democratic state? Because if there's a Palestinian Islamic majority, what's to prevent it being a non-secular Islamic state?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm thinking, let's go back to, for example, the South African model, right? I mean, the majority is black right now. There's a black rule. And what's the guarantee? I mean, why there is, for example, a United Nations, why shouldn't there be a constitution sponsored by America instead of guns and, bombs sponsored by America? Why shouldn't we have like a United Nations that actually promotes and protects democracies like that? Um, I can tell you, I lived in Palestine. I went to school and college in Palestine, and I'm thinking at least 50% of the Palestinian community are not Islamic. I mean, Muslims, they pray, they go to Ramadan, but they're not, you know, what you think. Just very, and, you know, Islamism in Palestine became more and more and more with the Israeli violence, with the Israeli occupation, with the Israeli harassment of the population. Hamas is a direct response to Israel's policies of killing and of genocide. There was no Hamas before 1982. There was none. I remember 1982. I remember how the population lived. I remember how the society was. There was no extremism, nothing. Um, these are a direct response for what Israel has been doing. Um, look at Jordan. It's, for example, it's a country where there's no Israeli occupation, although there's Israeli harassment, cutting off the water once in a while. But essentially, look at the society. It's a peaceful society and you know, secular society. Uh, you know, women have freedoms and maybe more than I don't know anywhere else. Although it's an Islamic society, there's a thriving Christian actual community in Jordan, and it's really heartwarming to see. You know, I took a few Uber rides with some Christian drivers, and just like had a very interesting conversations. Just so, yeah, I think with with justice there wouldn't be any extremism. It's just an answer to injustices. So look at Gaza, for example. So you see Hamas in Gaza. And why? Because it's a blockade for 15 years. You can't breathe in Gaza. What do people do? That's what they resort to. So,
Okay, I just have one last question for you, and then we'll quickly wrap it up, unless someone else has one more. But are you finding that there are some Jewish organizations that are supportive of the Palestinian cause? Uh, there are some progressive Jewish organizations, I think, that are opposed to Zionism. And I don't know how strong they are or how frequent they speak out, that kind of thing, but I know a number of years ago at one of our we have general assemblies we used to around the country every year, and there was Jewish organizations there that were supportive of Palestine through Youth for Justice and the Middle East. So yeah, if you could just, is there much support from the Jewish side?
I think locally there's a Jewish Voice for Peace in Milwaukee. They have a chapter here. They're great, and there are three ladies that run it. One of them, Rachel Buff, she's a professor at UW Milwaukee. Lorraine Malcolm, she's also a professor at UW, and also kind of blank on the last name. Oh, Jody Malamed, she's a professor at Marquette. So there are actually at UWM as well. Our advisor for Students for Justice in Palestine, our faculty advisor was Professor Lorraine Malco, who's Jewish. There are these Jewish organizations, but a lot of the mainstream Jewish organizations, the ones with money, and a lot of it are largely Zionists, like the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. I uncovered recently that they had sent, over the course of, I think, 10 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars to settlers in the West Bank, directly, or somewhat directly, through another fund in New York and then to the West Bank. So there are these organizations. There's an organization in Israel called Standing Together. They're a liberal Zionist two-stater organization, but they do a lot of work where they go to the West Bank and they stand in solidarity with the Palestinians that live under threat of settler violence. They watch their farms when Palestinians go to sleep, and they're in a kind of a position of privilege in order to be able to do that, because an Israeli soldier is going to think twice before actually using violence with another Jewish Israeli. So, but for the most part, there's some organization called Bend the Arc. I think they have a chapter in Madison. So there are a few of these small progressive organizations. Some of them are Zionists, some of them aren't, but they are increasing in numbers as I see it. I'm not sure. I don't have the figures for that, though.
Yeah, I just have a short story to share. I worked with this guy in a previous job. Jewish, we were friends, we go to lunches, all that stuff. October 7th happened, we reached ourselves, so we get together for coffee and talk about Palestine, the solution. I said, yeah, sure, let's do that. So when we started talking, he said, oh, a two-state solution. I said, you know, it's just too small. Then why two-state? I mean, can you and I live together and run for the same, party? Maybe you as a president or vice president or the other way around. Why not? I mean, he says, that he's concerned about the demographic, like the birth rate of the Palestinians. He said, well, there's higher birth rate. Why is that a problem? And then he said something else. He says, we're different culturally and all that stuff. Okay. And he said it in a I don't know. I mean, there is a lot of brainwashing that's happening from this Zionism, and also there is the fear. We have to acknowledge and understand that for Jewish people from history. They've been victims all through history in Europe, all that stuff. So, however, I mean, the Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians were the most welcoming, the most harboring, the most, of the Jewish population. Everywhere you think, Yemen, Morocco, Iraq, Palestine, they have always really sought refuge in those areas, and they were protected. But yeah, these are things that needs to be. I think dialogue and education and stuff that we're doing is probably going to bring more people on board and away from Zionism, because honestly, Zionism is a very terrible idea.
Okay, well, we kept you overtime here today, and I appreciate your presentation. I think we've learned a lot. Thank you so much.